So here are two of the biggest puzzles of our time. First, why do we all work so much, even when our technology is making us incredibly productive? And second, why is the race for artificial intelligence speeding up when the very people building it are warning us about catastrophic risks? Now, these might seem like totally separate questions, but as we're about to see, they actually share a single hidden logic. Let's dig in. Let's start the clock back in 1930. The brilliant economist John Maynard Keynes looked at the technology on the horizon and made this wonderfully optimistic prediction. He was totally convinced that by the time his grandkids were around, they'd only need to work about 15 hours a week. I mean, what a beautiful vision for the future, right? But, well, it never happened. Not even close. In fact, most of us work roughly double the hours Keynes predicted, and that's despite an incredible 8-fold increase in our productivity since he wrote those words. We have all the tech we need for more leisure, but for some reason, we just can't seem to grab it. So that's puzzle number one. And that brings us to our second and maybe more urgent puzzle. You have the world's leading AI researchers, the people at the very frontier, openly talking about existential risks, dangers on a global scale. And yet, the race to build even more powerful AI isn't slowing down. It's hitting the accelerator. So why are we collectively sprinting towards a finish line that many of the runners seem to think might just be a cliff? Okay, so here's our game plan for connecting these dots. First, we're going to unpack a really powerful framework I'm calling the 5 rules of tragedy. Then, we'll use those rules to solve the productivity puzzle. After that, we'll apply the exact same logic to the AI race. And finally, we'll get into why the AI problem is so much harder and ask the big question, can we actually change the rules of the game? The whole idea here is that both of these puzzles are what game theorists call a structural tragedy. Now, this isn't about bad people making bad choices. It's about good, rational people being pushed into a collectively awful outcome because the system they're stuck in is fundamentally broken. So what exactly is a structural tragedy? Well, think of it as a special kind of coordination failure. It's a situation where pretty much everyone can see a better outcome is possible, but the very structure of the game itself stops them from getting there. It's a trap, basically, where perfectly logical individual choices lead to a collective disaster. And here are the 5 conditions that create that trap. You can think of this as a diagnostic checklist. If a problem checks all 5 of these boxes, you've got a structural tragedy on your hands. First, you need multiple independent players. Second, there's a key choice between cooperating and defecting. Third, defecting is always the smarter individual move. But, and this is the key, everyone would actually be better off if they all cooperated. And finally, there's just no way to enforce cooperation. All right, with our checklist in hand, let's go back to our first mystery. Why did that 15-hour work week never happen? Let's run it through our 5 conditions and see what we find. First up, multiple players. Well, the global economy is the perfect example, isn't it? You've got millions of competing firms, hundreds of nations. No single person, no single company can just decide for everyone to work less. So that's a definite check. Okay, condition 2, is there a binary choice? Totally. When a company gets a productivity boost, it faces a fork in the road. It can cooperate by cutting work hours while making the same amount of stuff, or it can defect by keeping the hours the same to expand its output and just crush the competition. And that brings us to rule 3, dominance. Just put yourself in the shoes of a CEO for a second. If your competitors cut their hours, you gain a massive advantage by expanding. And if your competitors expand, well, you have to expand too, just to stay in business. So no matter what anybody else does, the only rational choice for you is to defect, to expand your output. But here's the tragic twist, the 4th rule. If every single company could somehow magically agree to reduce hours together, everyone would win. Market shares would stay stable, but workers would get more free time. The crazy thing is, the outcome where everyone defects, overwork, is actually worse for everybody involved. So finally, why don't we all just agree to work less? Because there's no global referee. That's rule 5. If one country says, okay, 30-hour work week for everyone, companies can just pack up and move their capital to a country that lets them work 50-hour weeks. Enforcement is basically impossible. And there you have it. Keynes's dream didn't fail because of culture, it failed because it was a perfect structural tragedy. Okay, now let's pivot to our second and far more urgent puzzle, the accelerating AI race. We're going to apply the exact same 5-point checklist, and you're going to see how the same tragic logic plays out, but this time with unimaginably higher stakes. Condition 1, multiple players? Oh, you bet. We've got the giant tech companies, we've got specialized AI labs, we have entire nations pouring billions into this, and then there are the sprawling open source communities. It is a very crowded, very decentralized race. Condition 2, a binary choice? At its heart, yes. Every single one of those players is constantly facing a choice. Do we cooperate by slowing down to focus on safety and alignment, or do we defect by hitting the gas to get ahead of everyone else? In why is defecting, accelerating, always the dominant strategy? Well, if your rivals slow down, you have the chance to seize a potentially insurmountable first-mover advantage. And if they speed up, you have to speed up too, just to avoid being made totally obsolete. The pressure to push forward is just immense. But once again, here's that tragic inefficiency. A world where everyone slows down for safety is objectively better for everybody. Why? Because the catastrophic risk from an unsafe superintelligence is, well, it's non-excludable. It doesn't care who won the race. It affects the winner just as much as the losers. And finally, enforcement. This is where it gets really scary. AI is just software. It's code. It's intangible. It's easily copied, and it can be developed in total secret. You can see a nuclear facility being built from space. You can't see an AI model being trained. This makes any kind of global monitoring an absolute nightmare. The AI race fits the definition of a structural tragedy to a T. So, we've established that both of these huge problems share the exact same 5-part structure. But, and this is a huge but, they are not equally severe. The AI problem is the same game, but it's being played on the highest difficulty setting, with the highest possible stakes. To really get a sense of this, let's compare it to nuclear arms control, one of the few times we actually got global coordination right. With nukes, the military tech is pretty separable from civilian use. With AI, economic and military research are the same thing. Nuclear facilities are big and observable. AI development is hidden in software. The barriers to building a nuke are sky high. The barriers to entry in AI are low and getting lower every day. On every single metric, AI is a coordination challenge unlike anything we have ever faced. We can actually try to quantify this. Using a metric called the Tragedy Index, which measures just how hard a problem is to coordinate on, the numbers are just staggering. A massive global challenge like climate change scores around 600. AI governance? It scores around 4,000. It's not just a little harder, it is an order of magnitude more difficult to solve. So, are we just doomed? Is it hopeless? Not necessarily. Look, understanding the structure of a problem like this is the absolute first, most essential step to having any chance of solving it. A diagnosis is not a prophecy. The whole point of identifying the rules of the game is so you can start figuring out how to change them. And that brings us to the final question, and I'm going to leave this one with you. We've laid out the 5 conditions, the 5 rules of the game that create these tragic outcomes. So if you had the power to intervene, if you could change the game, which one of these 5 rules would you try to break? Because breaking just one of them could change everything.